You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
These are just reports coming in at this hour. Ukraine has hit 5 Russian military bases in what could be the most damaging drone strike of the 3-year war. Ukraine has targeted strategic nuclear bombers in Belaya Air Base in Siberia. This base is 6,112 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border. The images of Belaya Base shows rows of Russian strategic and nuclear bombers burning. Now, apart from this, Ukraine has hit Ivanovo Air Base, northeast of Moscow. This is 1,972 kilometers from the front line. Diaghilevo Base, located south of Moscow, was also targeted. This is 1,581 kilometers from Ukraine border. Ukraine targeted Olenia Naval Base in Murmansk region. This is 3,673 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. A huge explosion has rocked the Russian Arctic city of Severomorsk, which is home to the Northern Fleet's main naval base, although the damage is not yet clear.
Смотри, что творится, я не знаю даже, что это сейчас взорвалось.
So this is a developing story coming from Ukraine and Siberia. And Ukraine has hit 5 Russian military bases in what could be the most damaging drone strike of the 3-year war. Ukraine targeted strategic nuclear.
Welcome back to More War Monday. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, headline, Ukraine plays a card and says it destroys large part of the Russian nuclear bomber fleet, and the Northern Fleet Navy headquarters is damaged. Well, CDM Press reported yesterday that the Ukraine Armed Forces had successfully conducted a large-scale drone attack, as you just saw there, at 4 Russian airfields housing nuclear bombers and the Russia's Northern Fleet headquarters for the Navy, where nuclear submarines are said to be based. Early reports estimated nearly 30% of Russia's nuclear bomber fleet to have been destroyed or damaged, but you have to take that with a grain of salt, folks, because both sides in a war like this are not going to put out the truth, and that reporting should always be questioned close to the time of the event. First reports from the battlefield are almost always wrong. And while this could be a significant blow to Russia's deterrence forces, it's not likely to have much impact on the current battlefield. The larger question is how Russia is going to respond to such losses, which are estimated could cost more than $2 billion so far. Definitely not the $7+ billion that the Ukrainians reported, by the way. And according to the nuclear doctrine the Russians published late last year, they may be entering that realm of operations. The other big question is, will Russia respond against any of Ukraine's allies if they can confirm what type of support was used on their part in these attacks? And finally, the peace talks second meeting convened this morning in Istanbul, where both delegations showed up to be at the table. So that should be interesting to see if there's any forward movement at all, and if it's possible. Well, L. Todd Wood joins us today to discuss these circumstances. He's a former special operations helicopter pilot. He's CEO of CDM Press. He's on a mission to report the truth, as America's free press should be, to protect our way of life. Todd, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. Man, we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Always love it. One of my favorite shows because I can talk to a fellow military Air Force officer. It's always a treat.
I appreciate that. And no, I had no insight that this operation was going to get pulled off by these guys, which really is a significant operation. You got to give it to the Ukrainian guys. This is a significant operation from their perspective. It's highly successful. The impact on the battlefield, as I said in the opening, is questionable, and I don't think it'll have much at all, if any thing. But you're a special ops guy. What do you see from your perspective the significance of this operation using these drones and the way they got them in and the targets they attacked?
Well, it was definitely a brilliant operation. I see this in a different light. I see this as Western intelligence services using the Ukraine excuse to attack Russia's nuclear force. And that's disturbing to me because if you pair this with the leak that came out last week, allegedly, of Russian ICBM operations, I mean, that's two of the three legs of the triad that have been attacked within a week. I don't see this as a Ukraine operation. They have their name on it. It's like a white label, if you will. But my thinking is that we're in a situation because you had a week ago an attempted assassination on Russian President Vladimir Putin, and allegedly, at least for the press, Trump didn't know about it, and he didn't know about this one. What does that tell you? That tells you that the part of the American armed forces are not being led by the leader of the free world, which is very disturbing. Yes, it was a brilliant operation. It took a year and a half, according to reports. They trained using AI on bomber aircraft ID, which you and I remember from back in the day when we had the book. But this is. I think your public needs to understand this is much bigger than just a Ukrainian attack on Russia. And yes, it's going to be very interesting how Russia responds. What do they attack? I mean, what can they do except for kill the leadership? That would be even more effective than 400 drone attacks into Kiev and across power centers. It'll be interesting to see what they target. I think that'll be interesting. And also, I think we should be well open to blowback here in the U.S. I mean, as that line in the movie The Patriot says, the war will be among us. And I think we're approaching that point, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's we'll get deeper into that concept that you're talking about because I share your feelings on that. It's a bigger operation than just the Ukrainians, but a little bit harder to pin the Allied support down because of the way the op was conducted. Instead of like a HIMARS getting satellite feed to it, we know where that's coming from, but let it not ever be said that the Allies weren't involved in this. And I'm sure some people are even saying, well, meeting two for the peace talks was this morning. It had to be the UK because Prime Minister Boris Johnson derailed the last peace talks in Istanbul in 2022. That's how quickly folks connect things together, man.
Yeah. Well, it could be the UK. It could be the UK.
Yeah.
Or
I was looking for any.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was looking for any valid reporting on. I saw a hit that kind of went by my screen really fast this morning about a nuclear submarine being hit. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, there was supposition that the northern base, which you showed a clip of, the naval port, was a big base there for submarines. I haven't seen any reporting that's credible that there was a sub hit. Yeah. But this was a brilliant operation, and they used asymmetric warfare. They used drones, which Ukrainians, I'll give them this, are the experts with drones now, and it seems to be anyway. And with American and Western help, obviously, they're building these millions of them per year. And I don't know how you defend against this except for some new type of technology, like an EMP that's regional or something. I don't know, to just take out the electronics. There's a clip fascinating because there's a lot of fiber optic cable all over Donbass now because a lot of these FPV drones, first person view drones, are being, since they were jamming them, they're using fiber optics. So the battlefield is littered with these tiny fiber optic cables everywhere. And now the drones are flying. When they see an opposing force drone, they try to fly into the fiber optic to cut its feed, so it just crashes. There's a lot of interesting videos about this and the use of shotguns. Every vehicle should have a shotgun on it, any vehicle on the battlefield right now.
Oh, absolutely. And the famous
Mm,
Flechette artillery round should
mhm,
make a comeback
mhm,
very
mhm.
quickly in this on all in every armed force that there is. If you don't have Flechette artillery rounds, you don't have a good drone defense if you're doing kinetic type warfare. The other question I had right out of the gate here is they had to have some really good analysis of the truck
Mhm,
transportation system uh,
mhm.
in the entire country of Russia. Is that hard to get? I mean, in America, it's not, I don't think.
I don't know the answer to that question. I think there are probably Ukrainian spies all over Russia. I mean, they can blend right
Mhm.
in. But again, I think there was a point made. I interviewed Brandon Weichert the other day, who's really one of my favorite geopolitical analysts out of DC, and he said the point that needs to be realized here is they know where Putin is at all times. At least the West does, and the
Mhm.
fact that they could target him on a helicopter heading to Kursk was fascinating. And so I think they know, saying they are the Western intelligence agencies know a lot more about Russia, obviously, than
Mhm.
we've been led to believe.
Yeah, I can say that that is true from my day in the military. I can't
Mhm,
speak to current, but I can put my
mhm,
imagination on it with today's
mhm.
technology. And I wonder if these trucks were already inside the country or they just came through what looked like regular transportation of what people are saying are these modular cabins that were going to all these different locations, just
Well,
as if they
there's
were
there's
normal.
there's a big push on inside Russia to build like tiny housing, like survival housing,
Hmm.
because of the threat of nuclear war. So that has been a popular thing. Also, all of their goods are not coming from the West anymore. They're coming from the East and up through Asia, Central Asia. So they're probably very used to trucks coming up through through that corridor into like Yakutia and that area, and then heading over toward Moscow or out east. And one of these was like 6,000 kilometers away or
Yeah,
miles. I forget. So it was a long. It was up in the northeast, near in eastern Siberia.
right.
And so I'm sure that they're used to these trucks coming in from China, Mongolia, etc. And it probably wasn't very hard to camouflage those. And that's on the Russians, and it will be on us if we don't get our act together. This is a huge wake up call. I mean, and I don't know the truth of this. Maybe do the bombers have to be out in the open like that for START treaties, and not under fortified positions?
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to
Mhm,
bring it up. That
mhm,
was a requirement under the New START treaty, but both sides I think have dropped the New START treaty. However,
yeah,
let me caveat this for all you naysayers out there that are community noting every post, like even General
mm,
Flynn's post that talked about it this morning, saying they were out in the open and everything due to the treaty. The United States Air Force followed nuclear weapons treaties on B 1 bombers for years and years, probably more than a decade after it was removed from nuclear capability and reported as required by the treaty. So just because the treaty may not be being followed by the governments, the military people are probably following parts of it still to this day and not even realizing it because the systems are
yeah,
so big and so vast.
yeah.
Uh, One of the other things that I was thinking about, I was talking to one of the guys that I think he still lives in Russia, David, that's in the audience today, and he'll probably come in and make a comment at some point, is what the rubber tires were on top of the wings of some of the Bear bombers that I saw. And he mentioned for wind. That's what I suspected that was because somebody asked me if it was some kind of drone defense thing, and I don't think so. But what the thing that tells me is that those particular aircraft were obviously on long-term parking when you look at the
Mhm,
shots of that. And I'm wondering if that's like a semi boneyard type status, and
mhm.
that in fact, those targets were actually not active aircraft, a lot of them. And our side that was targeting them thinks they were, and turns out that a lot of them may not be, and that's why
So
some of the
you're
numbers
saying
coming
that
out of the Russian Ministry of Defense are probably going to be a lot lower, and they are a lot lower.
you're saying it's to break the lift on the airfoil? Is that what
Yeah,
you're
for
what
high wind stability, high wind
yeah,
stability, and I think the ones
yeah.
I saw were the Siberian airfield, and that would be it. That would make sense because you get a lot of high winds up there. I know, having
I
lived
didn't hear
in
that.
the American Siberia.
I heard that some of the targeting systems on, some of the cruise missiles, it may be something to foil that. But that, the seeker heads. But
Yeah,
I
could
just,
be.
yeah, that's a good explanation, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah, so it just makes you wonder. Again, first reports from the battlefield are almost always wrong, but we know what we can see. We got to take a break. Time when we come back, we will look at the nuclear doctrine that Russia put out last fall, and whether this crosses any of that line into that realm. Those of us that are nuclear warfare experts have been always concerned about that issue from the start of this and even before it, and we should be always tracking on that as if we are potentially in a war with a nuclear power, because Russia has the largest nuclear arsenal in the world and it is maintained. We'll be right back with L. Todd Wood, CEO of CDM Press, about the Russian attack that the Ukrainians pulled off.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at WVWFoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
The war between Russia and Ukraine has heated up following Kiev's audacious drone attack deep inside the enemy territory. Well, there are apprehensions that it could provoke Russian President Vladimir Putin to use nuclear weapons against Ukraine. Last month, Putin said that the need to use nuclear weapons has not yet arisen and expressed hopes that they will not be required. However, Russia last year signed a revamped version of the country's nuclear doctrine, spelling out circumstances that allow it to use its nuclear arsenal. Now, according to an AP report, the version lowered the bar, giving Putin that option in response to even a conventional attack backed by a nuclear power. Well, according to the Federation of American Scientists, FAS, Russia possesses approximately 5,460 nuclear warheads, with an estimated 1,718 deployed. Russia continues to modernize its nuclear triad with the likes of RS-28 Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile. Russia plans to deploy Sarmat or Satan II missile despite challenges and failed tests. The missile is a critical part of Russia's nuclear arsenal and has global attention due to its devastating potential. While this missile contains several warheads, as many as 15 arranged as multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicle MIRFs, allowing it to strike multiple targets simultaneously. Measuring 116 feet in length and weighing 220 tons, the missile boasts of a speed of Mach 20 and a range of 18,000 kilometers, enabling it to target regions across Europe as well as the US. Now, the missile reportedly could deliver warheads 2,000 times as powerful as the atom bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. Now, while the development of Sarmat faced delays, last year, Russia confirmed testing a hypersonic intermediate-range missile in an assault on Ukraine. The missile, named Oreshnik, is a nuclear-capable weapon. The Pentagon says it's based on the RS-26 Rubez ICBM. While not much is known about the missile, Ukrainian military agency said the missile is equipped with 6 warheads, each with 6 submunitions. Putin said that it has a speed of Mach 10 and range of 5,000 kilometers, adding that there are currently no way of counteracting this weapon. He claimed that the weapon is so powerful that using several such missiles, even fitted with conventional warheads, could be as devastating as a nuclear strike. Well, this is just one of the examples of post-Soviet era missiles. Other in operation.
Welcome back to the Rob Maida Show. It's More War Monday, and my guest today is retired Air Force Special Operations helicopter pilot and president of CDM Press, L. Todd Wood. And Todd, had to dedicate a segment of this to the nuclear piece to this because it's important. When nuclear powers are going at it in any way whatsoever, at any level, that type of the thinking that goes along with nuclear warfare has to always be integrated into this. In spite of some of the crazy people responded to me and you and others on X saying we're cowards and appeasers and afraid and timid and all that. No, folks. Anybody attacks my country, you'll see me leading with my fangs out at the front of the line, whether it's with a M16 or a pop gun. I don't care. But I'm a smart guy too, at least when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I'm going to force people to think about the strategy and the consequences of first, second, third, and fourth order of these actions. Look, they put that new doctrine out last fall, and as late as a month ago, as you saw in the clip, Todd, that the President Putin said they had not reached that threshold where nuclear operations were being contemplated. But that new doctrine has a piece in it about attacking the nuclear force structure. And if a nuclear power is supporting attacking the nuclear force structure, that had my attention when he said it. It has my attention now. As you mentioned earlier, two legs of the triad so far have been attacked.
Think about what if China was working with the cartels and did the same thing and sent trucks full of drones into the U.S. to attack our ICBMs and bomber bases. I mean, that's essentially what's going on. And Russia is in a position, unfortunately, of use it or lose it at this point. And that's really disturbing, number one. Number two, I've spent a lot of time in Ukraine, a lot of time in Russia. And I can tell you the people in Russia worry that Putin, that they think he'll use nuclear weapons if he needs to, no doubt about it. And so the combination of those two things is disturbing. I think Trump just needs to back out of Ukraine altogether. I mean, and just sever the cord, or it's his war, right? If we go forward and he's still funding and arming Ukraine, then it's his war. He said today that he wants Ukraine and Russia to negotiate. Great, but you can't keep having a rogue proxy army, possibly with rogue elements inside our own intelligence services, going up and trying to target the nuclear delivery systems of the biggest nuclear power in the world. That is insanity, unless you want a global war, which I think these people do in some disturbing way.
Yeah, I mean, next segment we'll dedicate that segment to Senator Lindsey Graham and Da Nang Dick Blumenthal and their $800,000 hotel rooms stuff over in Ukraine, but also that they're there. It's it's no surprise to me that this happened, and I saw them in the media 24 hours prior landing in Ukraine to do their latest visit, right?
What were they doing? Did they know about all this? Did they not tell the president? How long have they been working on this? Allegedly, this has been going on close to 2 years to plan this mission. That was before Trump. Was Lindsey Graham and Da Nang Dick involved in this? Inquiring minds want to know, because that's a Logan Act issue. It's a sedition issue, in my view. I mean, to start a war without the president's approval, that's not cool. And we can talk about the money laundering stuff whenever you want, if you want to do that now or next segment. But that's a real problem, and this is just one more example of that, in our opinion.
Well, going into the doctrine that Russia published last year, I'm pretty concerned because Vladimir Putin is the architect of that doctrine. He's the one that signed. He's the president that signed off on it. It was a shift to integrate modern times and what's happening currently on the battlefield. What do you think their response to this is going to be? Yeah, I know there were some missiles launched last night and some drone attacks that were pretty muscular, but I don't think that's the real response.
Well, Putin has been very restrained, but I've been scratching my head. I mean, what is he going to target, right? I mean, yeah, he can target the Ukrainian forces in Donbass. He can target power stations or whatever, but I'm not sure that gains anything. You could see an assassination attempt, a decapitation strike. I'm sure Zelensky's way underground, but I don't know what he's going to do. That's what disturbs me, and the people behind Putin are even worse than him. So it's not a good situation, and Trump just has to in my view, cut the cord and move on, because where does this go from here? Is what else is planned? Whether this is not the last one they've been planning, right? If they planned this for 2 years, they've got other ones in the hopper.
Sure.
It's like the Israeli, pager attacks. I mean, what else do they have planned already in the hopper that could go off? So I'm sure Russia's thinking the same way. There's truck alarms going off in Russia. They're worried about trucks, like we were worried about, going through the airport detectors 30 years ago, after 9/11 or whatever. Everybody always fights the last war. I try to stay and think about, well, what's coming. I mean, that's what worries me.
Yeah, me too. Speaking of the response internally, Commander Salamander account was tweeting out video of truck backups at the borders, at every border coming across, and rightly so. I'd be looking at
Yeah.
every single vehicle coming
And
through.
we should be too, right? We should be too. And this is going to shut down. There's knock-on effects, because it's going to shut down their economy, and it's going to hurt our economy, because we have to start thinking like this. If we don't, we're really wrong. I haven't seen any movement like that out of the Trump administration, and I haven't talked to my active duty people about this, but I'd like to know what the DoD is doing to try to counter this threat. It's a big problem.
Yeah, I've been covering it for well over a year, ever since we first got the reports of the December 2023 17 nights over Langley, is what I call it. 17 nights of 100 drones, unknown origin, unknown owners, flying unchallenged over our F-22 fleet, or the biggest portion of it. Anyway, I mean and I've seen nothing. So that doesn't mean there's not anything happening, obviously, in the world of classified systems and compartmented information. I'm sure something's happening, but there are some relatively quick, keep it simple, stupid, cheap, effective strategies you can take that you don't see happening around, and you would see some visual signs at our bases, would you? Like netting,
Oh, well,
that kind of thing.
you sure would, like you do on the battlefield in Donbass. You see tanks with cages on top and nets over them, over, fortified positions underground. You see, the shotguns on the trucks. I mean, there's plenty of evidence of people are thinking about this, encountering it, and hopefully we're learning from a lot of this technology, and maybe we learned from this very well from the Ukraine battlefront, and we're involved in this. I don't know, but we have to find a counter to this. I'm concerned about our Army troops, ground pounders on the ground. How do you? There's a lot of disturbing video of individual soldiers being chased by drones. There's one with a Russian soldier. He just gives up, drops to his knees, looks at the ground, and the drone flies around him and then finally kills him. It's disturbing, and I don't want that to happen to our guys and girls in the military. And we need to, I hope we're thinking of ways to counter this threat, because it's really, it's almost, it's so new and terrifying that we have to deal with it.
Yeah, we do. On the nuclear subject, before we go to the next segment, obviously, if Putin was going to cross that line because he sees his doctrine's been violated, like the Russian government said they were going to do, what do you think he would target? I'm assuming he would do a low, some kind of low yield target somewhere within Ukraine, but that's some inside the box thinking. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Germany is a target. I mean, I think UK is a target. That's an attack on NATO, and then the question is, does Trump, I'm not the expert legally, but does he have to follow through on an Article 5 attack? He can say that that wasn't something that we have to respond to. I don't know, but I think that's whoever is driving this. That's what they want. They want a nuclear exchange and kind of the Great Reset, if you will. That's a hell of a reset, and I think that's what they're driving to, unfortunately. And what would he target? I think he would want to kill Zelensky. Because if you're going to go all the way, you got to shoot the king, right? And you got to shoot the guy that's the problem, even though he's being controlled by someone else. But if you get rid of him, then you can maybe have an election or whatever. I think likely what will happen, if anything is close to that, will be multiple Orezhnik attacks on maybe underground facilities, which will use conventional warheads, but will still be very devastating.
Yeah, and have we gotten any bomb damage assessment from that first Oreshnik attack that can be relied on as to how deep those things can go? It looked like it was fairly deeply penetrating to me. Well, we got to take a break, and we'll come back. We'll see Lindsey Graham essentially confess to what you just said, Todd. There are greater forces at work here, and this has just got the Ukraine name on it. There's definitely a bigger force behind this operation. We'll be right back with L. Todd Wood of CDM Press.
President Trump said that Ukraine doesn't have good cards. Well, Russia's much bigger and has a lot more people. I get that. But the world has a lot of cards against Russia. And one of those cards that we have is about to be played in the United States Senate. In America, you have more than one person at the card table. We have three branches of government, and the House and the Senate are poised to act. What would change our mind if Russia came to the table, agreed to a ceasefire, and earnest?
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and man, do we have more war for you. I thought we were going to be a step closer to getting a peace agreement in this Russia-Ukraine conflict well sooner than where we're at now. And that's Senator Lindsey Graham essentially confessing that they've had a plan all along, and they're about to pull some triggers in the United States Congress to try to do their own national security policy for the United States of America, which is not in the purview of the U.S. Senate or the U.S. Congress. It's in the purview of the one man elected by all the states and all the people, the only man that has the power to execute the laws of the land, and that includes our foreign policy. And it's pretty darn firm in that. My guest today is L. Todd Wood, CDM Press CEO and former U.S. Air Force Special Ops helicopter pilot. Todd, that is right there the biggest indicator that you're right. It's a bigger force at play in this operation than just the Ukrainians.
Well, there's a tape of him and John McCain in 2014 speaking to Ukrainian soldiers to pop all this off. And this plan has been, your audience needs to understand, this has been a long-term plan to achieve what they've achieved so far in establishing a war with Russia. And the goal is probably to gain resources, probably to remove a player that's against the globalist regime, whether you like Putin or not. That's immaterial. I'm just talking facts here. And, what Lindsey Graham is doing is seditious, in my opinion. He's working, he's a talking head for some other power inside our government, or maybe not our government, but in our ruling elites inside the United States and maybe even outside, whoever is in control. And, I want him to wipe that smile off his face, because he's smiling about a nuclear war. That to me is just, obscene. But him and Da Nang Dick were over there, and they were working obviously to help this drone attack happen. And I think we need a public statement on that from the White House. Trump needs to say something, right? I mean, just going hiding and saying nothing. maybe he wanted this as a negotiating ploy to try to force Russia to the table. Maybe he knew about it. Maybe he didn't. But if he didn't know about it, it's a real problem. And if he didn't know about Putin being assassinated, it's a real problem. So I'd like to know what he knew. I'd like to hear it from him.
Yeah, it's a real big problem, Todd. If he doesn't know about it, even if he does know about it, and he hasn't come out and said anything about it today to establish the framework around this event before it gets out of hand. As you know, once bullets start flying, war cannot be controlled. And something like this, that's why I wanted to talk about the nuclear doctrine today with a military guy that understands Putin better than a lot of other people and understands Russia and this part of the world. Because once the war box is open, I tweet about it all the time. You know, all bets are off. All bets are off for both sides, no matter box or not, man. Well, we got a question from the live audience. Let's go ahead and take it. Shell's the hostess over there. Go ahead, Shell.
My question, it's amazing that you played a clip with Lindsey Graham. Do you think Trump was even aware of what was even going on in Ukraine with General Milley? And then the amount commentary from Lindsey Graham prior to the election about Ukraine, I don't as if there's an operation still going on that Trump is that a possibility?
Definitely things going on that Trump is not aware of. You know, Ukraine was involved in going after Trump. We broke this story, I don't know how many years ago, where, you know, you remember the black book that allegedly Manafort did, where he's taking money off the books. I was in Kiev. I had just interviewed national, and I forget the name now. Ciernak was the last guy's name. He's a Soros operative. I didn't know it at the time, but that came out like a few days later. And I called Svetlana, who was the person who was, you know, the press woman there. I said, I just met with you. What is this black book you just put out? And she said, oh, we just got that off the internet. So, or someone got that off the internet. So, you know, it was all cooked up. And my point is, they went after Trump in Ukraine, and we all know the Vindman call, the impeachment efforts. I think Trump knew about all this and just maybe didn't know the extent of it, and maybe he doesn't know the extent of it now, but he definitely knows that these people are against him and that Europe is working against him, and that's why you're seeing a lot of these comments. You know, you saw the chats with the former nationalist Waltz, his signal chats, which were made public. You know, and I think Vice President Vance was saying, you know, he's really concerned about Europe. I would agree, and I would hope they were much more along than just figuring this out on their signal chats. But there is a group in Ukraine, just like a group in the U.S., a national security establishment that is anti-freedom and pro building some other type of control structure for both countries.
Wow, that's quite a development there. Now Ukraine, I understand it. I mean, they've canceled elections and blamed it on their constitution and put Orthodox Christians in jail and imprisoned Russian Orthodox Christians and priests and deported them and all kinds of things. But they want an entirely different control structure in the United States. Well, when you look back at 2020 and know what we know today, I could see that.
Well, that's why we were deplatformed heavily in 2020, 2021. I mean, we lost everything because of our reporting. And I was in a room, for instance, with a gentleman who was in the prosecutor's office while all this impeachment stuff was going on. And he was showing me stacks of, you know, files in his home where they had taken evidence out because they were afraid it was going to be destroyed against the corruption inside the Ukrainian system. And he's showing me images of how they're laundering the money. The money comes in to the central bank, and then it's sold. I may have talked about this before on your show, but it's sold to a broker dealer that's friendly to the matrix of the bankers, and then they sell a bond. Bonds are priced at par at 100, so they sell the bond at 99 and a half, and then the broker dealer sells it back to the central bank at full price, and so they pocket that difference, send it offshore, and it was just a circular washing machine going on, and that's still happening. And I think that's what Lindsey Graham was doing with Da Nang Dick. Part of it, all of this. If you look at all of this, it's about to destroy the country. It's about bringing in tyranny, but it's also about getting rich off organized crime. And so I think they were, who knows, 800 grand for 2 nights. I mean, yeah, they had security forces and all that, but that's a lot of money. So who knows? Maybe they had a few $100 grand go here, there, pay a friend, do something. Who knows? But I asked a source in Kiev, and he said, "Yeah, it's money laundering." Straight up, he said that.
Oh, the hotel
So
bills? Absolutely.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
got to be money laundering. I mean,
yeah,
I mean the whole hotel building would have to be lined with gold inside and out. For-
yeah,
and even then, it's just a room with a bed in it and a bathroom. I mean, come on, man. There's no doubt
yeah. And then,
about it.
in 800 grand, you can't buy that many hookers in 2 nights.
Yeah.
So I don't know
Yeah.
what I don't know what the money went to, but it's not good.
Maybe produce the next P-tape movie or something.
Yeah, who knows?
I thought I saw a hand in the audience. I was going to take that question. Is it gone, Shell? Again? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a special occasion. My question is I'm super aware of it being logistics in the Army in the past, but when we changed colors of vehicles, we changed it to the new theater of operation. Um, has Trump said anything, or we heard anything about the pre-positioned equipment in Poland, and it's all painted dark green? Is that got any relevance in your eyes?
I wouldn't know about that. I think most of
It's
our older
it's
equipment's
it's
been used.
you can read. Yeah, I'm sorry. You can look it up. It's in a UN facility. It's 1,500 pieces of equipment, of U.S. equipment, pre-positioned in Poland.
Yeah, as somebody that was an enlisted guy in the Cold War, stationed in Europe in a NATO unit, all of our equipment was painted dark green. All U.S. equipment was dark green. There was no like camo pattern and those kind of things. So that doesn't surprise me that we're shifting back to that if we're having vehicles placed permanently or semi-permanently into that. What do you think, Todd, is the card Graham was specifically talking about the U.S. Senate was going to play?
Well, there's a lot of talk about sanctions. They could go nuclear to a higher level, I guess. With they're already off the financial grid. Who knows? Maybe they'll target Russian ships at sea, or target other countries that do business with Russia. I really don't have a good insight into that. I don't think it's going to be effective. I think Russia's actually, their economy is doing pretty good right now. The ruble is increased in value. Their economy is growing. Of course, it's based off a war footing, and that has to be rationalized and rebalanced at some point. But they're doing pretty darn good as far as the economy is going. The people are united. The one thing we've done is unite the Russian people. I mean, 30% of the Russian people is Muslim, and the Russian Federation, and if you look at the recent recruiting ad, you can go to armedforces.press and see that, our military site, the recent Russian recruitment ad. It has different religions getting ready for battle, and it shows Christianity, Orthodox, it shows Muslims in their tanks. So they're using this to unify the country, and they don't have a mobilization young boys off to the front to die in 4 hours. In Russia, yeah, they've got a big, a lot of people signing up. I don't know if the 60 grand a month that Medvedev is saying is accurate, but they do have a patriotic movement going on there that we're helping unite and make them a strong country.
Yeah, I mean, I could see them emerging from this on their way to regaining superpower status. It wouldn't take that much anyway. If they're concentrating on building their manufacturing base so it's capable of doing, going off military, off defense manufacturing and into civilian manufacturing easily, then they would be well on their way. Well, we got one more segment left, Todd, and I want to talk about the peace talks. They take two at the table this morning. They actually all showed up, which didn't surprise me, but probably surprised some people. And it'll be interesting to see what your take is on what's going on with that. We'll be right back with L. Todd Wood of CDM Press.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Meanwhile, representatives from Russia and Ukraine are meeting for another round of face-to-face talks. Delegations from both sides arrived in Istanbul on Monday. It's their second round of direct talks in just over 2 weeks. Neither President Zelensky or Putin will be in attendance, but security remains high in Istanbul. That is where DW correspondent Dorian Jones is standing by for us. Dorian, what can we expect from these talks?
Well, I think at the moment the expectations are pretty low. I think there is a relief that these talks are still taking place, given the fact that Ukraine has launched these large drone attacks on Russian bases just 24 hours before the talks are due to take place. And before that, Moscow had been bombarding Ukrainian cities, inflicting large numbers of casualties. So that given the fact that the military escalation continues, the fact that these talks are going ahead is seen as positive. It's seen, I think, a recognition that both sides don't want to appear weak ahead of these talks. And I think there's also possibly the influence of the United States. President Donald Trump has invested some diplomatic capital in wanting these talks to succeed. And neither Ukraine nor Russia want to upset Trump, given his ability to inflict pain. Ukraine still depends heavily on United States weapons, whereas Russian President Vladimir Putin will not want Trump to impose economic sanctions, further economic sanctions on the Russian economy.
It sounds like talks for the sake of talks.
I think there is a recognition that that this is going to be a protracted process. What we're seeing here is basically getting both sides to outline what they expect in memorandums. Now, according to the Reuters news agency, they have got access to Ukraine's memorandum. Ukraine, among its demands, is that it is insisting that it will have a large military force. It will be able to join NATO and possibly the EU. And it's also calling for reparations as such. Now, we don't know what the Russians' demands are. The Ukrainian delegation speaking ahead of the talk said they're still waiting to hear what the Russian memorandum is. Now, when you get those two memorandums together, idea is that you start to look for some potential common ground. But no one's expecting any major breakthrough at the moment. It's more outlining what both sides want and then looking forward to another meeting to take this process slowly forward. I think the recognition is that any major breakthrough will only happen when you have the leaders of Ukraine and Russia and possibly the United States at the high table where a deal will be hammered out.
Welcome back to the Rob Maida Show. It's More War Monday, but we have to dedicate each one of these Monday shows to a little bit of talk about peace, and this is the most important area. I mean, it's killing the most people, is this war between Ukraine and Russia right now. So I wanted to chat about this with our guest, L. Todd Wood, the president and CEO of CDM Press. And Todd, do you think a lot of people are saying that this attack by Ukraine over yesterday with the drones was meant to Some are saying it was meant to derail the peace talk. Do you agree with that?
I don't think Ukraine wants peace. I think I've said it many times. Zelensky's working for somebody else, and peace is not the agenda. I think that at the very least, it was to come into the talks with a much stronger psychological profile. That they achieved that. Russia is on its back feet, but people need to realize that with the Vietnam War and other long conflicts, it took years to come to a peace agreement, and we bombed Hanoi during the peace agreement, if I remember correctly, and so or the negotiations to try
Several
to
times.
get to the final position. So kind of have a come to Jesus with with the enemy, and the maximalist demands that are coming out of Moscow are just that. They want the four territories in the east. They want a neutral country. They want elections. They want Russian speakers to be not persecuted. There's a long list you can find on the internet on what they're demanding. Of course, Ukraine is saying that's not going to fly. But I think there's the fact that they're meeting and didn't scream at each other and walk out for nothing. That's positive. It just needs to keep going. And as you said, or your orator said there, you find ways to make small progress. They're going to have a massive troop or a prisoner of war exchange. They're going to have a dead body exchange. They're talking about children coming back to their parents. And it's funny that Zelensky was saying we want the kids back, and I think Medinsky was the negotiator for the Russian side, and he said stop kowtowing to the old ladies in Europe with no children. So I mean that's kind of the ones that didn't have kids, and they're in Ursula von der Leyen and that crowd. I don't know if she has kids or not, but I found that humorous. But look, I mean, it's going to take some time, and I think Trump holds the cards, and he needs to apply them because I think he's well aware this could go much further, and hopefully behind the scenes, there's stuff going on that we don't see. But we just need to end it, and Trump needs to take the political pain to end this for everybody's sake. Because
yeah. Just before we came on, I saw an early report of Medinsky issuing the memorandum. There was a lot of media hubbub about complaining and whining from the corporate media about the Russia hasn't issued their memorandum, and we've had Ukrainians for some time now saying that was the stopping point. But the early reporting was that they did give their memorandum, and I saw where he was talking about the kids. And one of the things about the missing children, and I've suspected this all along, but it's good to see an actual formal Russian leader talk about it now, is that some of these kids were evacuated from war zones because they needed to be evacuated to save their lives. And the Russians, Medinsky said, he told the media, he said, look, we have continuously asked for lists of these children because these children were not kidnapped. They were evacuated for the most part and sent out of the war zone to save their lives. And if they have family, we return them to them. And if we don't have family for them, we've got them safe and everything. And the only list and they finally gave a list from Ukraine, it only had 339 names. Now you go back and look at the reporting, you're talking, I mean, some are putting this like in a million number of children that have been kidnapped and absconded with into Russia before. And so I was glad to see Medinsky talk about that and to see that this memorandum's now been issued by both sides. Do you think, Steve Witkoff's talking primarily with the Russians and retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg is talking primarily to the Ukrainians. The way I understand how the U.S. side of this process is working, Kellogg has always had a decidedly different view than the president, hasn't he, on this peace effort?
Yeah, he has, and he's that's the Russians said they don't want to deal with him because he's too pro-Ukraine. He's not unbiased, and I think that's right. I mean, he's one of the ones like Petraeus, who's out there saying Ukraine can win. It's the blob narrative mouthpieces. The other one is Hodges, the ex-European commander, is another one out there saying that Ukraine can win. I mean, it just have to keep fighting. The war needs to end. Nobody's winning right now. There's a peace treaty to be had. I mean, these four eastern territories, find a line and call it quits, right?
Yeah. And they were primarily Russian ethnic speaking territories. Two of them, I think, voted to withdraw from Ukraine
Yes.
and be independent, and later picked up by Russia and everything anyway. And that's why Russia was in it, helping that area in the first place, and why they invaded was to protect those people, from the way I understand
Mhm.
it. In amongst the strategic view that Ukraine is their protection for their near abroad, is what they always called the
Mhm.
near abroad, even before the Soviet Union. Well, we got some questions in the audience. Let's go ahead and take those before we get to the end of the show. Go ahead, Show.
We have Lonnie Wilker.
Hey, thank you, Colonel Manis. It's interesting listening to the, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
It was interesting. I thought that Ukraine did the attack when they did. I think it gives a really strong hand for them coming into these top day, because they can show right now that they can reach anywhere in Russia without a problem. And that should give, I think it should give pause to the Russian military to think about next steps. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. And then also the second question I had was on the type of weapon to combat these drones. And I'm a huge fan of the Mark 19. Maybe that's because I had used that in the Marine Corps, but I think a certain type of ordnance designed for that would be pretty effective, at least in the shorter range stuff. What do you guys think about that?
As for the first question on Ukraine striking anywhere in Russia, I will tell you this is not Ukraine striking anywhere in Russia. This is Ukrainian maybe pulling the trigger and driving the trucks, but I guarantee you this was built on some other capability besides just indigenous Ukrainian capability, intelligence, where the aircraft were, what bases, what type of aircraft they needed to ID, where they were parked. All of that didn't come from Ukraine. It came from, somewhere else. And I think this is a proxy war. And I think you have people inside the US government and the UK government fighting a war against Russia with a proxy army. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So you need to think about the ramifications of that, because, the enemy gets to shoot back, and they could shoot back here, or we could get dragged into a nuclear conflict or a bigger conventional war in Europe. And we don't want that. So, and then on the different, drone protection, I'm not familiar. I'm not an Army guy on the ground, but as far as artillery rounds, but I would bet that there has to be a simple fix to this. I like the EMP idea. I mean, if you can flick a switch and have a short range like power surge and take out any electronics, as long as yours are hardened on your side, then that would do it, in my opinion. Kind of like the movie. What was the movie? What was the movie? Ocean's 11, where they flicked an EMP and turned off the armor safe protection or whatever it was.
Absolutely. I like it even simpler than the netting idea, especially for large aircraft ramps and those kind of things, where you can't just go out and build a hangar overnight. Well, you can, but they're either inflatable or canvas, and you still got to have something to stop the drones in case they can blow holes in that. So, I just think you should keep it simple, and in a place where you can use kinetics, use something like flechette rounds, CIWS with flechettes, shotguns. All of those are effective, especially your security forces with shotguns, people. Shotguns. It's not hard to do. I can't take the last question, so I apologize for that, because I got to give Todd a chance to talk about what CDM Press is up to, what they're looking for in other ARs real quick, and tell people how to find them. Go ahead, Todd.
Well, thank you. Our network is cdm.press. We are a global wire service, global news without the globalist spin. We have reporters all over the world. We're up 24/7, putting out not every story, because we're not big enough to do that yet, but we put out what you need to know. We have 7 newspapers in the U.S. We have a military channel, Hispanic channel, the Balkans, Middle East, Eastern Europe. We started in Eastern Europe. We have a big expertise there. And look, I mean, if you want, just put us in your daily scan, cdm.press. We're working on all kind of things. We're breaking news all the time. The elections in the U.S., still on the vaccine stuff. We have a big video effort. My show is 10 to 12, Monday through Friday, the Skiff, which is an intelligence briefing. And that's Eastern time. We put out a lot of military shows. We have a Colorado show. We have a Georgia show, which is very impactful politically. So look, I mean, we are building a new network where you can get real quality information that helps you. We're not going to talk about the latest destruction that Carolyn Levitt did to a reporter in the newsroom because we don't have the bandwidth, but we're bringing you what you need to know.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, my friend. I appreciate it. Until next time, that's L. Todd Wood, CDM Press CEO and American veteran here in Veterans Month. Tomorrow, retired FBI agent Chris Hinkle from right here in Mississippi. We're talking Comey's assassination threat. We're going to talk the terrorist attack in Colorado, among many other things. And, of course, what's going on with Patel and Bongino and the FBI itself and what we can tell so far. We'll see you then. It'll be Training Tuesday.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.